I like to say that the real religious question that challenges us is there life before death? Do we live to our fullest? Do we live with an awareness of God's presence and how enriching and beautiful that is as we live in this world? I want to talk about 3 words that somehow connect to one another because of their root. And their root is the holy, the presence of the holy. Kadosh is the word for holy. We have a prayer we say every week called Kiddush. Kiddush, declaring holy. We raise our cup on Friday night and Shabbat afternoon and declare the Sabbath holy. And we thank God for sanctifying it. We celebrate that sanctification over the richness and depth of a glass of wine. And that is because Shabbat is holy. God declared Shabbat holy from the very beginning of time. And we participate in that holiness through an act of declaration, but a declaration that's a celebration of life. And therefore Kiddush over a glass of wine, and the l'chaim, the to life blessing that goes with that Kiddush, is a statement that holiness is to be found right there in life, right there in celebration. The word Kiddushin, a plural form of Kiddush, Kiddushin is the Hebrew word for marriage. We celebrate marriage as a holy moment, as a holy act. A couple declare to one another, Harayat mikudeshet, you are holy to me, I declare you holy to me. Our relationship is one of holiness. To live a life of holiness begins with how we treat other people. Begins with recognizing the image of God in one another, and by treating one another as holy beings. So I declare to you under the chuppah, under the canopy of marriage, yes, this relationship will be one of holiness to us. Our lives together, including our lives of intimacy, will be lives in which we fully respect each other and see the unique holiness that is in this other human being that I've had the great privilege to love and to have love me. So Kiddush on Shabbat and Kiddushin under the marriage canopy, and Kaddish. When a member of our close family dies, we say Kaddish. For a parent, when a parent dies, we say Kaddish for 11 months, for almost a year. When a spouse or a child or a sibling dies, we say Kaddish for a month after their death, which is to say every day in the synagogue, for those most strict 3 times a day, we stand up from amid the congregation and say, blessed and made great is the name of God. The Kaddish prayer was not originally written for mourners. It was originally written as part of the synagogue, as part of the house of study ritual. Before and after studying Torah, you recited the Kaddish. You recited the declaration of the greatness of God. Then Kaddish was brought into the synagogue service as a way of separating different parts of the service between one service and the next to set them off. You would recite a Kaddish. Somewhere in the Middle Ages, we don't know exactly when and where, Kaddish was adopted as a prayer for mourners. But it never mentions death, it never mentions the dead, it never mentions the one we loved. It declares the greatness of God. It declares that God is fully present in this world more than any praise could ever say, more than any words could ever utter. Why do we say this after a person dies? Because we have a sense that in death, something of God has been taken away. Every human being is the living image of God. When a human being dies, that image, as it were, is diminished in the world, is lessened in the world. And we want there to be more divine image in the world. So we say, Yit Gadal, may God be greater. May the image of God increase in the world, not be decreased. And may I find a way through my memory and through my celebration of that person's life to say, yes, God's image, God's presence in the world was greater because that human being lived. So in the celebration of life is where we find holiness, and in holiness, and seek the search for holiness, is where we find a renewal of life, where we find vitality. That sense that the everyday, the ordinary, is the holy. All holiness is exemplary. Shabbat is holy to show us how to treat a day. The moment under the chuppah, under the marriage canopy, is holy to show us how to treat one another in the context of marriage throughout the rest of the days of our lives, even the days that seem difficult and ordinary and mundane. There too holiness to be found. And holiness, the Kaddish, is said after death to teach us something about life, to teach us to appreciate in every moment of life in this world the special gift we have of those who love us, who most embody for us the presence of God.